Good morning, my dears. I hope you finds you warm and well tucked up, as you can see I am on my porch. I'm here today to seek to give you a little context for your reading of the Agamemnon play by Aeschylus, the first of the great playwrights of human history. This is a difficult task for you as well as for me to try and condense it into 15 minutes, which I won't succeed in doing. And I might make a second video for you because there are several kinds of context that you will need. I think much of what I'm going to say you could cover by a little research online. But to give you the bones which you'll need for the quiz, let me start with the context as regards the actual play itself, the plays that constitute the body of ancient Greek drama, Athenian tragedy, as we also call it. This took place in Athens at the festival of Dionysus once a year for 3 days. And there, each day, 3 plays selected out of all the plays that had been submitted, 3 consecutive plays, connected plays, will be performed, followed by a satyr play, a satire, something to make you laugh at the end of the gruesome history that you've been exposed to, which is an exploration of the full horrors of the human heart, and to relieve you of the awfulness of that, the theatre made you laugh, and quite right too. So here was an enormous theatre, a great banked semicircular arena where thousands and thousands, 14,000, 18,000, there are different theatres from this period in and around Greece, came and sat, and supposedly you could hear a pin drop. The acoustics were so miraculously conceived. The actors, furthermore, supposedly went to the seaside and recited their lines over and over with pebbles in their mouth to learn how to make sure they articulated clearly. Because that articulation was all that the audience had to go on. The actors were masked, appropriately masked according to their character, but something of the beauty and the miracle of masked acting is that you see the mask differently according to what the actor is saying. Masks can seem to express many different emotions, and this is true, of course, of acting without masks, that we are reading into a face something that is not always being conveyed to us, since not all actors are Jim Carrey, who is determined to make his entire face express whatever emotion he's feeling at the moment. So there the audience was, and in came the statue of Dionysus himself, and once he was seated, the effigy of Dionysus, in whose honor the festival was, once he's in his seat, then the festival can begin and the first play can be staged. We do, in fact, only have one completed trilogy of plays, although there were a great many, and that is the one, because it was perhaps the greatest of all, whose opening play, Agamemnon, we're about to read. You are about to read, and the entire trilogy is called the Oresteia, because it is the story of Orestes, a figure about whom you will learn. So there they were, waiting for the statue of Dionysus. Dionysus himself, the god who represented many things, like most of the Greek pantheon, sometimes extraordinarily diverse. Athena herself, after whom Athens is named, was a god of wisdom and of war. So she combined those things. Dionysus combined in himself kindred things, wine, like his Roman counterpart, later counterpart, Bacchus, wine, and therefore song, and since song, therefore drama, therefore storytelling, and if storytelling, then also trance, mystery, the things of the unconscious and the subconscious, which are, as our playwrights already understood there in Greece, the matter for drama. They are the subject of drama, regardless of which era we look at, which country we look at. The human unconscious, the human soul, is the subject matter. So these plays were prepared over the whole year leading up to the festival, and citizens were recruited supposedly by casting by lot, although I rather doubt this, since the citizens in question had to sing and dance. And if you did that by lot using the phone book and a pin, God knows what we'd have on our stages today. But they had a lot of time to rehearse, so maybe they were all able dancers and singers by the time the curtain went up, metaphorically. No curtain, just an enormous open space with a kind of house front behind it, with enormous doors that opened and closed to provide some of the most dramatic moments in the history of Greek drama, and which surfaced again in the Renaissance in the Shakespearean theatre, where at the back was a kind of a house with a curtained alcove below, more or less where the Greek doors were, and a balcony above, which the Greeks didn't have, but continuing this sense that we were outside a house, or inside if the curtains were drawn on the inner alcove and suddenly a dining room was revealed, or a sitting room. Otherwise, the space was the space in front of the house, which could be as huge as Shakespeare required it, a battle in Antony and Cleopatra, or could be somebody's backyard. So here were the good citizens, the chorus, and the chorus is, as it sounds like, a group of people, not all who speak at the same time. There was a leader, the choragos, and others followed him, and how the lines were divided up, I don't think we really know. We still perform these plays, so we have the opportunity to do it in different ways. You'll see on the page, if you read the Robin Bond translations, there's reference. The chorus speeches are divided up into strophe and antistrophe and other details of how chorus utterances are organized, about which you do not need to worry. So you can ignore those little notations on the left-hand side of the page. And the chorus could be any group of people. In the play we're going to read, they are the old men of Argos. Argos, ruled over by King Agamemnon. He and his brother led the expedition from Greece to Troy, since the prince, one of the princes of Troy, Paris by name, Alexandros actually, but he seems to have wound up known to us as Paris, had stolen Menelaus' wife Helen, famous for her beauty, and taken her back to Troy, and the expedition went to Troy under the command of Agamemnon and Menelaus, her husband, to retrieve his wife, Agamemnon's sister-in-law, and the war went on for 10 years, famously, 10 years being a nominal period, I think, if indeed there ever was a war of Troy. Almost certainly there would have been a struggle in the Eastern Mediterranean in the 12th century BC, which is roughly when we suppose this war, if it was a true war, to have taken place. There would have been a struggle for trading dominance, and perhaps a lot of little wars, or perhaps one gigantic war. The question of what we think of today, thanks to the archaeologists, as the original Troy, whether that was the Troy, is a complex issue, made more complicated by the fact that we were looking, we the archaeologists and the whole culture and everybody, we were looking for a city that corresponded to the fall of Troy, which we knew of thanks to the Iliad by Homer, if there ever was such a person as Homer, but there certainly is an Iliad written some 300 years later, in which Troy falls by the ruse of a large wooden horse being left behind by the departing, defeated Greeks. and led in triumph into the city. And then at night, out of this hollow wooden horse came, I don't know how many, Greek warriors. How many could you fit into a telephone box? This is a question we don't look at too closely, because they managed to slaughter the Trojans sleeping off their revelry, their celebration, their victory celebrations. And so we were looking for a city that had been sacked and destroyed, perhaps by fire, and what we found was a rather miserable little city, which didn't correspond to Troy as Homer described it. There was, however, another city, because there were 7 or 8 cities, one on top of another, the centuries having built on the rubble of the century before, and that had magnificent gates and everything about it that was right for Homer's Troy, except for the fact that it was destroyed by earthquake. And finally, thank goodness, a smart archaeologist arrived and pointed out that Poseidon, Earthshaker, as was one of his titles, he was not only god of the sea, he was the god of earthquakes, and his symbol was the horse. And so the wooden horse is a representation of perhaps something that was drawn rather than told, but which spoke of the decisive intervention of Poseidon, the Earthshaker, and his symbolic horse. So indeed, Troy was perhaps destroyed by earthquake, not necessarily with any Greeks in the vicinity, but it made sense of the magnificent city that was also found. So we have a version of Troy, and in this play we have the story of the immediate events, the events immediately following the fall itself of Troy. The very opening scene announces that Troy has fallen. There's a watchman, a guard, as Robin Bond describes him, often termed watchman, who has been watching for 10 years, waiting for the fire to be lit. Fires all across the eastern Mediterranean, as was done even in the part of the Mediterranean where I grew up, where there were little fortified round fortresses of maybe 5 or 6 feet across, raised up across above the vegetation overlooking the Mediterranean. On one such are my father's ashes scattered at his request. And on these little raised round forts, fires were built when the Saracens, the pirates, were seen. And so the fire was lit, and the lit fire drew the attention of people further down the coast, and news travelled like wildfire. And this is what happens at the very beginning of the play. I can see that I'm not going to get very far into my description, do forgive me, and if I may take the liberty of giving you one further video. So the watchman at the beginning of the play is amazed to be roused finally from his sleep or his sleeplessness by a fire, which means that Troy has fallen. And so in the course of the play, back comes the triumphant victor, Agamemnon, to his family home in Argos, where we are in the play, and to his wife Clytemnestra, not the easiest of names to pronounce, so you'll hear me repeating it, and I hope you can follow it and her as Clytemnestra. And comes home to her, although, alas, she has spent the years sleeping with his cousin, and this leads to a kind of doom which you might well anticipate. Other factors precipitate the doom as well. This is a most unfortunate family whose story we are about to see a part of. The most dysfunctional family in world literature, going back, as it does, through 5 dysfunctional generations. I think it's 5, it might be 6. And I will have a word to say about that in my forthcoming video, which is I'm going to add right on the end of this one. So forgive me for being unable to cover the ground in 15 minutes, but this time I have been defeated by the material, the quantity of it, and essentially the strangeness of it, which I appreciate will be very demanding for you. So until a moment or two from now, goodbye, my dears.